say, can they beat the Lakers?
Who are you guys?
The Dan Patrick Show on your home of the Beavers, 1240 Joe Radio.
Great to have you with us, Mike Parker and John Warren. On this Thursday afternoon, we want to jump right into it with Oregon State head men's basketball coach Wayne Tinkle. We'll get to the Beavers here in a moment and some of the things going on here in the early stages of the offseason, the good news with Daniel Gomes and all of that about the current team and more apropos to our world going forward. But I've gotten a little weary here the last couple of days in reading various stories on websites that I feel have unfairly attacked the state of men's college basketball. Gino Auriemma himself saying he used the word unwatchable. Mark Cuban, for whatever reason, Mark's given a platform and a forum constantly on all issues, and he has a diatribe about the state of the college game. And I'm just a little weary of it. So I thought, well, how can we address it? And I thought, well, perhaps no better person to go to than our own Oregon State head men's basketball coach, Wayne Tinkle, to deal with just from a guy who teaches the game at a very fundamental and pure level and loves the game, both men's and women's college basketball, no question about that, can address these things, I think, from a very informed perspective. So, Coach Tinkle, thanks for taking time for us. First of all, how are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks, and looking forward to spicing up the afternoon through our conversation here.
Our ratings are going to spike.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. What's your initial sort of knee-jerk reaction to the critics that you've been hearing and become aware of taking shots at the men's college game?
Well, you kind of laugh at Mark Cuban just because, like you mentioned, he's always feels like he's an expert on any particular topic that's out there that, and when he has an audience, he's going to speak up. So no surprise. I mean, respect the heck out of him for what he did in his business and the money he made and, for what he's doing with the Dallas Mavericks. But, it's funny when you look at guys at a different level, how they feel like they can reach out and talk about the state of, something that they're not even involved with is humorous to me. And everybody knows his personality. So I didn't put much thought into it. More directs it to that conversation. There's ebbs and flows. There's highs and lows and trends. And I don't think you can really call this a trend. I think if it's 3, 4, 5 years in a row where the scoring's down and that sort of thing, and maybe then you can say, okay, where are we at? But just with what's kind of gone on the last year or two, maybe, I don't think you can consider necessarily a trend.
Andy Katz came back in a retort to Cuban saying that I was expecting Andy to take up on behalf of the college game, and instead he said, well, there's a way to fix it, implying that Cuban was right. And that bothered me a little bit. I don't know if you read that whole exchange or even had time to do so in your world, Coach, but do you think any sort of, quote, tweaks or fixes or whatever else? College baseball, for example, has adopted a flatter seam baseball, and there are more home runs in the college baseball game this year. I mean, are there any things that you would think, that you would be in favor of tweaking?
Yeah, I don't mind the discussion or the eventuality of going to a 30-second shot clock. I don't think it alters our game all that much. It's funny. If all of a sudden you take 5 seconds away and then the game gets sloppy and there's more turnovers, now everyone's going to start complaining about that. That teams are undisciplined, can't take care of the ball anymore. And if scoring went up 10 points a game, then you'd have people saying, where'd the defense go in our game? So I think there's always going to be those that are on either side of the fence. But I wouldn't mind the shot clock going down to 30 seconds. I wouldn't mind every high school every state going to a shot clock. I know, my son in Montana, they didn't have a shot clock, and it wasn't that enjoyable to watch. I think that might help the game a little bit. I was involved when it went from 45 to 35. When I was in college, it was a 45-second shot clock, and we were pretty regimented in what we tried to do, and I know we didn't enjoy it as players. So I'd be in favor of that. And one other thing that I think really garners some some in-depth conversation, is changing the rule on fouls. I'd really like to see there be a sixth foul added. Eric Reveneau, a good buddy of mine from Portland, even said, why have a disqualification at all? Why not put it at 6? And then if there's a foul after that, the team gets 2 shots and the ball. So those are some discussions. I don't know if we can go that far, but basketball is the only sport where you are eliminated and disqualified from a game, for a non-malicious act just by fouling. And you want to see the best players determine the games. And how many games do you watch where a kid gets his second foul in the first half or a third foul, or 4 early in the second half, and they're on the bench? Or they get their 5th, and the best players aren't on the court. So I think that's another area of discussion we should bring up.
Beaver coach Wayne Tinkle joining us here on the Joe Beaver Show. There was some criticism that came out this year for the whole college game, but some Pac-12 games and Oregon State games that, quite frankly, Coach, took me by surprise. I'm like, what are you talking about? One of which was deliberate play. And I maintained, and I said on this show over and over again, especially when it involved the Beavers, look, it's the onus is on the other team to be able to score. So if the Beavers are playing great defense, which they did this year, it's up to Arizona to score, and Arizona couldn't score. So why is that coming out? Why are these people saying that the game is ugly because of deliberate play? There's a shot clock, and the other team has to score. I don't understand it when the game gets to the point where people don't, quote-unquote, like it. Too bad. That's what we grew up with, good defense.
No, exactly. And that's what was my point earlier, that you would have the same amount of people complaining if all of a sudden the scores were all in the high 70s and 80s. Where'd the defense go? I know just from being here for 10 months that Beaver Nation's thrilled that we're playing defense again. And in this particular year, now every year we're going to defend, but this particular year, we had to control the tempo with what we had to try to stay competitive in the games. So those people that are complaining, it's the onus puts the onus on the opposing team to try to speed us up. I mean, we in 2 games held Arizona to an average of 57 points. They scored 56 here, 58 at their place, and won 1 and lost 1. Tip your cap to our guys for buying in and defending and playing a way that we had to this year to stay competitive. Now that may change offensively next year. We may hopefully can score more points. I know we hope we shoot it better, but we're going to try to dictate the tempo defensively and do the same things we did this year to keep the other team from scoring. I think that's the objective, right? Score or hold your opponents fewer points than you.
Absolutely, and the defense was fantastic this year.
Yeah, you bet, and we hope to even improve upon it with some added numbers. So, there's always going to be 2 sides to every argument. I thought the NCAA tournament was a great tournament this year. You can talk about maybe the officiating not being at its best, but I don't know that I agree with that. But I thought there were some great games. I loved when the NBA, this is it really has me twerked a little bit. Now the NBA is sending down their talent to cover college basketball games when they haven't watched it all year, right? Mm-hmm. Now I understand it adds some entertainment value and maybe the ratings go up, but it was great when Kenny Smith had Bo Ryan on and before the Final Four and said, Coach, we know that Wisconsin loves to keep the score in the 50s, low 50s. How do you respond to that? And he goes, well, actually, if you do your research, Wisconsin led the NCAA tournament last year in scoring. The fact that we hold teams in the low 50s, that's what you want to do. And so I thought it was a neat point that, Wisconsin is deemed a deliberate team, but they always score the ball. But the fact that they hold teams in the low 50s, now people are knocking them for that, for ruining the game. I just don't get it.
Coach Tinkle joining us on the Joe Beaver Show. Well, you're speaking of Bo Ryan. He and Coach Krzyzewski after the title game exchanged a little bit. Bo said, we don't do rent a player here. Coach Krzyzewski kind of shot back at him. There's a lot of criticism, of course, for John Calipari and the one-and-done approach. And what are your thoughts overall about that, Coach, in the state of the college game and rent a player or one-and-dones?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of it, and I understand. You got to be careful because if you're ever involved in recruiting a player that has that potential, you want them to believe that you will give them opportunity. If that's what's best for the family. But I don't think that even 19-year-old kids are necessarily mentally prepared or have the maturity to deal with, that pace of life, the pace of the game, the responsibilities that lie within. But I do understand there's going to be some situations where, kid's family is really in financial straits and they got a chance to help. How can you take that away from them? But I love the baseball model where, if they want to go out of high school, good luck to them. But if they go to college, you've got to stay for 3 years. Because what happens is a lot of these kids, and this is coming from some pretty close friends of mine that have coached these types of players, is basically when they know they're one and done, you don't have them for a year. You basically have them for 4 months. Mm-hmm. Because once the first semester is by the books, they're out of school. They're not going to school anymore. The coach can't hold them as accountable because they know they're putting their name in the draft and they're gone. And it poses a lot of problems, for those institutions in the program. So if we're able to keep them for 3 years, I think we can hold them more accountable. We can get them closer to getting their degree, which should be the number one priority. And then we've got a chance to build a program. And I say we, as I'm speaking for everybody, to where you've got these guys for at least 3 years. So that's kind of how I see it. Now, I understand, what Bo's coming from. I don't know that I agree how he put it, and he had some pretty sharp things to say about the officiating, too, that surprised me. But, those guys are at a little bit different level. Are we going to turn down a player like that? Well, if he's made of the right stuff, certainly not. But we really, especially here early on, as we're trying to build things, are focusing on the guys that are going to be here 4 to 5 years, and maybe occasionally, recruit a junior college player in here.
With a top 20 recruiting class coming in for Oregon State basketball, Coach, which involves your own son and Coach Thompson's son, Stephen. I mean, already it sort of my mind hits on, well, you have said with regard to these guys, one of the things you like about the group is you believe you're going to have them for a long stretch. Is that your sense of things, even if those, your son, others, develop at a point where there's conversation that may take place about them, quote unquote, leaving early?
Well, I mean, that's let's hope that that's a conversation. Yeah. I think all those guys have a long way to go, but I would certainly. I would stand by my words. I think all of those guys, even though they may, really take off on that level, but I still think, staying in school, developing, becoming the best player you can be, socially, academically, and athletically, is paramount. And now, if they come in and show that they're, a possibility of being a lottery pick, that might be different, but. Mm-hmm. It's funny as you hear about these kids that are told that they come out early, they're potential first-round picks. Well, I know last year there was 84 kids told that they were first-round picks, and we know that the first round is, about 32 players.
Right.
So a lot of this is coming from the agents that want to sign these players, and they're telling them that they're potential first-round picks. Well, the numbers don't add up. So somehow, and I think it was Russell Turner at Irvine that made a point publicly at our head coaches convention at the Final Four. Somehow the NBA needs to get at the agents and somehow try to control what they're telling these kids, because we can send them all the pie graphs and the numbers of the percentages of who goes, from high school to college, from college to NBA, but the agents are going to promise them the world and sell them a bill of goods, and we're going to continue to see these guys leave early. And, if Cuban wants to get into the state of the NBA game, I mean, the fact that there's so many young kids coming in there that aren't ready, they're gambling on foreign kids left and right that they don't know a whole lot about, and a lot of them aren't ready to adjust. Those are the areas to really attack, I think, from that level as opposed to the state of the college game, in my mind.
Coach, last thing, and this I ask you I want to ask you about your own team and the Daniel Gomez news and so on when we close. But one other thing on the overall state of the game in terms of what just happened in the women's game and the amazing accomplishment of Connecticut and Gino Ariema. And congratulations to him and the incredible run he's had there. On the other hand, he was asked and said that he tried to watch the men's tournament and found it, quote unquote, unwatchable. And I just thought that's just a completely unnecessary thing to say with due respect to his coaching acumen. You've had two daughters, just achieve at a very high level at great programs in women's college hoops. So you can speak on both sides of this. What purpose does it serve for Gino to say such a thing, and what's your reaction to it?
Well, I mean, initially, I would say, gosh, that had to be taken out of context somehow. He's very accomplished. We all know that. A very confident guy. We know that. And he maybe just felt like he was at a point where he could make a bold statement along those lines, and it probably doesn't surprise a lot of people that he deals with. But for me, listen, the women's game and the men's game, they're apples and oranges. That's just you want to call that the elephant in the room. They're completely different games. Now they're played the same way with the same rules by and large, but you've got the men's game, and I won't call it faster paced, but it is largely an above-the-rim game predominantly, but they're both great games.
Right.
The advancement of the women's game at the D1 level has been unbelievable to watch. It's exciting, along those lines. But for him to cross over and make a statement like that, it's tough because I know if it was reversed and a men's coach ever said the same thing about the women's game, there'd be hell to pay. I know that from my own household, so I watch my tongue.
Right, I gotcha.
I would like to really ask him, what he meant by that statement and draw some particulars from it because, I'm a guy that I would love the game to be free and easy and fast-flowing, but still physical and defensive-minded. But threes going in and that sort of thing on our end, great. But we don't want to let the other team do that. And anybody that's competitive and is driven by, the success and getting their guys to play at their best would think the same way. So it's just so frustrating. You look at what's impacted the game. You see the contracts that are handed out and the length of the contracts and guys losing their jobs that are still winning 20 games and graduating their players. It's all about money. It's about television. And it's really a shame that, these discussions happen every off season, and ultimately are going to cost guys their livelihood, and we even saw it in our conference a little bit this year after the season. Great coaches losing their jobs, and a lot of it is I think, being, put out there by, folks that are throwing around some of these crazy notions that the game's going south. So we need to kind of draw together our coaches association. We had great discussions at the Final Four about the state of the game, but really it was we need to continue to do things the right way, not talk badly about each other or try to disgrace other staffs and that sort of thing in the recruiting world, and keep pushing this great game, as we move forward.
I love the sound of that, Coach. Finally, Daniel Gomez was sort of in that valley of decision and told you that he's coming back. What did that mean to you? And then just in terms of as you go into this offseason, you're on in your workouts and so on, and with the recruiting class and people coming in, you're returning guys, and Daniel part of that. What are your thoughts about all of that?
Well, that was big time, and it was great once we finally heard it from Daniel himself. But, his concerns, just to give a little bit of backdrop on it, he'd had so many injuries through his career here, a lot of frustration, and he's graduating this spring, which is great. And he felt that there might have been a need to just move on to help take care of his family. And then he took spring break and talked to his host parents in Idaho when he went there for spring break, and a few of his other close friends. And he made the decision that he enjoyed this year so much. It was the best year, these are his words, of basketball, since he's been in the States. He's really excited about the group coming in. And I think he bought into what he can do for us, not only on the court, but as importantly, how he can help mentor these young kids when they come in, that he made the decision to come back and want to be a part of it. And, the one part when I was trying to re-recruit him, so to speak, I said, Daniel, one thing I would really love to see for you personally is to see you play in the NCAA tournament. And I think that meant a lot to him. And he believes that if things go well and we continue to make progress, that hopefully would be a possibility next March.
That sounds great to everybody, Coach. And I was really thrilled to hear that news from him. He told me directly at Buffalo Wild Wings recently, even before it had gone public, and that was thrilling news to me.
So you were another guy that heard before me.
Well,
hey, I didn't.
Hey, there's two. Yeah, that happens too much in this life, but not to me very often. Hey, Coach, thank you for the time. Really good to connect with you on these matters. I hope we can do it again once in a while here over the next couple of months. Thanks for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you, Coach. Wayne Tinkle joining us. Mark Masseri next on 1240 Joe Radio. And Ryan Gibson at the end of the show. It's a busy hour on the Joe Beaver Show.